98 catches, 1,346 yards, 9 TDs as a Beeve. A former basketball player of Oregon State as well, drafted to the Buffalo Bills, and the best financial advisor the state of Oregon has ever seen. Mr. Tim Euhus is joining us on Chainsaw Crew. Mr. Euhus, man, how are you doing? Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. You got kids playing football this week. How you doing, man?
Good. It's been a little whirlwind of a journey for me. So I was actually down in Houston to watch my daughter play volleyball, buzzed over to Baton Rouge to watch my nephew play football, then back to Houston to watch another volleyball game, got home yesterday. Long few days and just everything that's going on in Beaver Nation, trying to catch up with that on my thumbs on the airplane and just nuts. So
There's
I'm
a lot
good
going
though.
on. There's a lot going on, and it seems like you're keeping busy in the good ways, honestly. But before we get into the current state of the team, I do want to talk about because last time you came on, it was just you and Josh. I was busy. I think Josh was at the hospital. There was a lot going on then too, but I didn't get a chance to talk to you. And we actually have already met, but you have no idea who I am. It was back in 2002. It was after the game against Stanford. I grew up in the Bay Area. You had 4 catches, 93 yards in that game. A big comeback W. Steven Jackson had an insane day. And you signed a small booklet that my mom has back in California. And I'll never forget that. I got like half the offense to sign my booklet. So you're on that thing. So I appreciate you for doing that.
Down
Being
down
so
at
cool.
Stanford.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Man, they let the grass grow out. That grass was like 6 inches long. Funny story from that game. I think it was that game. No, I was thinking Cal my senior year. Now that game we did a lot of wide delays. That was Coach Erickson's year. So Coach Banker was still there at Stanford. Coach Banker. Every time I see him up at the country club, he's still, oh my gosh, he tells my boys, Tim was the worst holder. I was the D coordinator at Stanford, and they had a big linebacker, and I think his name was Newberry, something like that. And he was either a Lake O or Lake Ridge kid. So I had to, I got to block him all game, and it was quite a battle. Like, yeah, one Oregon guy that got to go to Stanford. I'm not going to let him be my boss. I'm going to take this out on him. So we had a great win down there. Steven got a pile of yards. That's one of my favorite pictures I have from from playing football at Oregon State. Was actually somebody had the camera in the locker room after the game, and there's a picture of Derek and I just and they put us in like, it was almost like a double wide, like back in the back 40. I know I have it on my phone or somewhere. It's Derek and I kind of giving each other a hug after the game, and it's pretty cool. Funny, good memories. Big road win down there. Funny that you were at that game and you got off. Got photographs of the whole offense.
Well, because it happened because
Good.
we're family friends with the Kuykendalls, right? So, and I'm still close with Mark Kuykendall. He's probably listening to
Oh,
this.
okay.
So that was like obviously like we had because Mike was in there and he's like, "Go get some autographs." I'm like, "Okay."
Just go get some Big Mike. Go get some autographs. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely love that. That's funny. Yeah. Good times. Good times back when we got a lot of road wins and did some good stuff, and a little different these days. In the Stanford locker room after the game,
Yeah.
just tape everywhere. This was the nastiest, stinkiest locker room. I think that's maybe DVD right there. I mean, like, this is like they just allowed the media in there. Eric Manning just changing in the background. Guys are taking their shoulder pads off. It might even be Big Mike right there. It's Lee Davis or Mike, somebody with a big old cowboy collar. And then the coaches' locker rooms were like back here. They had these two little tiny doors that opened for the coaches. It's just silly.
It's a
That
sweet photo
is
though.
that is awesome, dude. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the old
yeah,
Stanford too.
yeah. Like, and the funny thing is, like, didn't even know that somebody was taking that picture. That's just like us
Candid.
celebrating a road win and fun. And I know exactly what Derek's saying there, and we can't repeat it on the old podcast. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Awesome stuff, dude.
Yeah,
That's so
that's
awesome.
funny. Well, thanks for bringing that memory up. That's a good memory right there.
Absolutely, man. Thank you again for being a good athlete at Oregon
Yeah,
State.
For sure.
uh, many moons ago. Well, what do we want to attack today? I've got some thoughts, but where do we want to start?
Well, should we just get right into the mud?
Let's dig into the mud. That's sometimes the best way to do it. You just rip the Band-Aid off. That's what we like to say, is rip the old Band-Aid off.
All right. Well, we'll just start firing away and we'll just let you talk. We'll take a back seat to
Yeah, go ahead,
it.
Tim.
All right. Well, as we know, yesterday, Coach
I
Bray made his first move, firing a special teams head coach that probably should have been fired many weeks ago. But there's a lot going on in the athletic department right now. Tim, where do you see this athletic department going?
That's a great question. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because obviously the program is still so like near and dear to me, and I want to see the best for Oregon State athletics, as all of us do. I think there's a couple things that we need, and the first is a change in mentality. And it's always easy to say that, like, oh, great, we're gonna have a change in mentality. Like, what does that even mean? But I guess from my perspective, and we're Northwesterners. Some of us might have experience with this, some of us might not. But if you guys go camping and you go out camping and you get lost, and all of a sudden you're like 4 or 5 days without food. You're up in the wilderness. What starts looking good to eat?
Anything and everything.
Anything.
Anything and everything. Bugs. Like bugs could start looking good to eat. And if you're eating bugs, what type of mode are you in?
Survival.
Survival mode. And I feel that right now the athletic department is in survival mode. And I think they've been in survival mode for the last like 4 or 5 years. Really, since this whole Pac-12 thing blew up. And rarely does it work out well when you're in survival mode, from my experience. And we've been in survival mode for 4 or 5 years. And now we're to the point that the fans are feeling that at such a high level. We have to figure out how to get out of survival mode. And so that's a huge change in mentality. And it's an acceptance of expectations on where we're at and where we're going. And I think that's kind of the next piece of the conversation. If we say, yep, we're in survival mode, we kind of agree on that, then it leads us down a path of where we need to get to. But there's got to be like an acceptance that we're actually in a really bad spot with this whole Pac-12 explosion that we've seen. So to me, I've accepted that. So how do we get out of survival mode? Well, you find your way out of the wilderness. That's the reality. Like you get to somewhere you don't have to survive anymore. So for me, what that looks like is a changing of expectations. And I think a lot of Beaver fans have probably thought about this, like current environment, NIL, all of that. Like the expectation is still so high. Because I see on Twitter where fire the quarterback, fire Malik, he's terrible. And I'm like, dude, the guy was 30 for 45 for 348 yards. He had a couple bad plays, but like that picture I showed you of Derek had a lot of those bad days. I mean, that's just the reality of it. He was a good player for us, but there was a lot of those bad days. And so for me, like, I think it's less on what the individual performance is like and what the expectations are. And there's an expectation that we can beat Oregon at some point in the next 20 years. And I would say that's not a good expectation to have, because we're just never going to compete with them. Like, I don't want to say ever again, but ever again in the current environment. So what does it take for us to if we're going to get out of the woods and exit survival mode and get to a place where we can compete with an Oregon, it takes money. Like, it's a fiscal thing at this point. And so if we can accept that, hey, if our NIL can produce like 3 to 7 million every year, we're never going to compete with an NIL team. And I don't even want to say consistently, like, I'm going to say ever, with a team that's paying their players 30 million, because it's just not realistic. And I don't I don't want to say sounds very negative to say that, but I feel that's reality, and I've come to accept that reality. Have you guys thought about what a payroll would look like for the Fiesta Bowl team?
Oh, you talked about this on the Joe Beaver show. It's like
Yeah,
it'd be insane.
it's not happening.
I mean, if you really think about it, but that's our standard, that's our expectation. And so if you look at if we're paying 1.5 million for our current quarterback, which I think is a good athlete and is a decent player, throws off his wrong leg a lot, in my opinion. But I'm not a quarterback guru. There's times that he steps into throws and just zips it, and there's times that he doesn't, and it just floats. But if you think about what we would have had to pay Derek, or what we would have had to pay Matt Moore or Sean Mannion, we wouldn't be able to afford them. That's just the reality of it. They'd really have wanted to have come here for a very specific, great coach to play for. And get to that piece in a second. But the payrolls would be ridiculous. And a Brandon Cooks and a James Newsom and a Mike Hass. And then don't even bring up like Chat TJ. We couldn't afford them. Robert Prescott. They wouldn't have been here. That's just the reality. And so, but that's where our expectation level is at. And so we have to understand, like, we're really, like the Pac-12 is in eating bugs land. Like, we're not Power 5 or Power 4 or whatever we want to call it. We're in the right division with Boise State, Fresno State, Washington State. Like, let's figure out how to be competitive and entertaining in that division now, and make it a focus to not try to be something we aren't. And again, that sounds like super negative, but at some point we have to acknowledge where we're at. Because I think that a payroll for the Fiesta Bowl team would have been $30 million. It would have been every bit what the Ducks are paying, what Ohio State's paying, because that's the level we were playing at that point in time. So to get to okay, the last thing I mentioned, then I'll let you guys just shoot me full of questions here, but brought up the coaching piece, and that somebody would, if we were going to keep a Derek Anderson in the current NIL environment, they would really have to want to play for a coach and take a pay cut to play for a coach. So you need coaches that are great teachers of the game. And I'm not saying that we don't have those. I'm not going to throw any shade at some of my friends and the current guys, but at the end of the day, you have to have guys that can teach the game of football at a real high level. And that's a Mike Riley level. And that's why Derek and Sean and Matt and those guys wanted to be here, because of Mike, because of his assistant coaches. So I think that's a really significant thing that we have to think about and recognize as we move forward. And so we need, an athletic department leadership that is not going to keep sugarcoating where we're actually at, that understands, hey, we're in a spot where we're eating bugs. Let's get a plan to not eat bugs any longer. We have to have an understanding from the fans of where the program is at and who we can actually get talent-wise and who we should be playing. And I get it was a scheduling debacle. I get all those things. Who we should really be playing and competing against. And then from the coaching perspective, we need coaches that can teach ball, because we're not going to get a lot of guys that just have great football IQs and are awesome players. we're not going to get it. We're going to have to be really good teachers of the game of football. That's my assessment on where things are at. It's pretty brutally honest, but there you go.
And it's good to have. I mean, as a former athlete, you understand how it kind of rolls out. But I mean, currently, college football is just such a mess. And now, recently, with Oregon State and the NIL stuff, Kyle Bjornstad, who was the GM slash consultant, steps down, right? Would Oregon State benefit from a football minded GM? And would Tim Euhus say no to being a GM? Because you're talking about budgets. You're talking about, you know, corralling a roster, paying guys. What do you know about financial advising, Tim? Tell us about it, you know? Or and if you
I,
didn't.
I, I would not know where to start with all of
And
that.
that's the thing. It's like who would know to start with with a
Yeah.
school like Oregon State? And it's because you see other programs like Cal and Stanford, they have, you know, former greats being their general manager. Ron Rivera obviously has great NFL experience. But for someone like Oregon State, like who would that guy be? Who would be a good fit for that role in your mind?
The guy that we would never be able to hire to do it would be Terrence Gray, who's with the Buffalo Bills right now and is a former Beaver. He's the first guy that comes to mind because you need somebody that has almost that professional football experience and knowledge from the personnel point of view, because you're literally bringing free agents together like every year, and you're judging them on how they can play together, what the coachability looks like. And you're doing the same thing with your not just the recruits, but kind of the free agent market as well, which is the NIL market. So that's a very real thing, like having somebody that understands that piece of it. And T. Gray's role with the Bills, why I don't think we could hire him away, because he's like second in command there. Other people that I actually think Kyle could be very, very useful in our athletic department still. I really believe that he could be super useful getting us out of the wilderness and getting us to a steak, and at least a nice elk burger, maybe, if not a steak, but get us away from bugs. I believe that he's been in the weeds enough in this stuff and understands it. Clearly there's some relational things that would have to get fixed there, but I think most people are not confident that the current situation can get us out of the wilderness at this point. I would need to see some true vision and leadership, and I just haven't seen it yet. Another guy, obviously Alexis Cerna is, a huge part of the program. I think Alexis has a lot to offer in that AD space, just from what I've seen him do with Beyond Football. Not to say that he can take over as an AD, but he can be very useful in all aspects of what we've been talking. Let's get out of the wilderness. He cares about it, but also understanding the game of football and understanding personnel. But as far as somebody from the NFL, T. Gray is the only one that I know that we have that's kind of done that would be able to come back and really get us in the right direction. Now, the second part of that is, what's that budget? Now, T. Gray might go to Ohio State to do it because they have the budget to pay somebody, and they have the budget to go get players. Yep. And so we either have to, increase our giving significantly, which right now I would love to see that. That's great. We have a few, big time boosters, obviously, that could potentially make that happen. But they would have to see the value of having a really good football program be associated with our university. So there's a value proposition there. It's more than just give us money. There's got to be a value prop to get us out of the wilderness, and why that's important to the academic side of our institution as well. Because at the end of the day, that's what we are. We're an academic institution. And we're kind of actually treating it that way, where a lot of places probably aren't.
Yeah, and I have a question about Coach Brave, and I want to get to that in a second, but I always tell people that come on this podcast, and Rob's heard me say it a million times, but Oregon State is like a farm system for some of these other schools. It just is going to be that way, and that's just the sad reality of it. As a former player, obviously, you didn't deal with the current situation of college football, NIL, and all of that stuff. How do you sell a student athlete to come to Corvallis right now?
A great question. It's got to be a fit for them, to me, academically, but also you're going to try to sell the experience. And what is that game day experience like? So that's why we need a better game day experience, not just from the athletic department, but the fans have to help provide that. And that's, I mean, I remember back in the Gary Anderson era where I wasn't like, if we win or lose, as long as we're competitive, like I'm happy to go to games and be a part of it. When we're not even competitive, that's what's frustrating. Like the Cal game, like it's just not even enjoyable. And my sadness has always been around, man, these guys don't get to experience what I experienced. Wish they could, because that's what would make them like a Beaver for life. And you look back at like when we go to do alumni events and you got the guys from like the 60s and early 70s, those guys still love getting together. They stay in touch, best friends, because of the experience they had. And you can't tell me the guys from the Gary Anderson era are getting together and like can have some big reunion and we had so much fun out there, you know, like that. You're just not going to have that. And that's what saddens me when we got, don't even know, 15,000 people in the stadium. We got this beautiful new stadium that we can't get people in. And I mean, there's something special about playing. Even when I was playing, it was like 33, 34,000, but every seat was taken. And it might have not been the loudest stadium or the craziest stadium, but man, our fans were having like, that's a great environment to be a part of. And so we reflect, unfortunately, more of that like Stanford experience that Rob had as a kid from back in the day. Like, you know, they're drinking wine and eating cheese up in the stands and listening to classical music at halftime. And like, that's just not what we want to be. And so getting that fan experience back for the recruits, I think is really big. And then I would hope that we're finding guys that really want to be coached hard. I'd hope that would be really exciting perspective. Is it wanted to come in, be coached hard, know what they're getting into. And yes, it could be because it's a farm system situation. And again, as fans, we have to be okay with that. If we get to see greatness for 1 or 2 years, we have to be okay with that. And I'm all right with that. I think I used to get very frustrated with that, with guys transferring and like, they're dead to me now. Changed my attitude because of where like an acceptance of.
And a few years ago, I was asking you when you first came on about Jonathan Smith coming back to coach Oregon State. Now here we are, a couple years later, and I'm asking you the same question. How do you feel about Trent Bray? What's he doing right now that you like? What he like? Are you liking what you're seeing out of him? Obviously, people don't like being told that. Feels like Bray was put into a impossible situation because that's the reality of what it felt like. And people will always fight back and forth with me, but I don't. Rob and I fight back and forth about it. We love Bray. We are so thankful for what Bray has done for this program. But what are your overall thoughts on what Trent's done the last 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's a super tough situation he was put into, and the expectation, I believe, from the athletic department was that ultimately he would retain student athletes. And again, without a significant increase in NIL or budget or anything like that. So there was a belief that, hey, if we hire Bray, he will instantly retain Damian Martinez. He'll instantly retain whoever that left. Jake Velling. He'll retain these guys, and he might even retain some of the coaching staff. But at the end of the day, the guys that were good enough to be playing at Power 4 level and good enough to be coaching at a Power 4 level, we're going to be coaching there and playing there. And the Mountain West level players, we're going to choose to stay here. And the Mountain West level coaches, we're going to be here. And again, that's just the reality of the situation. And so I don't want to say he took over an impossible situation. He should have known exactly what he was getting himself, my belief. He should have known the uphill battle that it would be. And, and I think the athletic department put him in a really tough situation because I think there was an expectation from the athletic department, I'll say, of taking the easy way out. And I don't, that'll sound disrespectful to Trent. I mean, no disrespect by any of that at all. But the idea that we're going to take a guy with no head coaching experience and a new NIL and a new kind of way of doing business, and we're not going to give him a Terrence Gray. We're not going to give him a support system. We're not going to give him a head coach, mentor him. I mean, I think it didn't last for very long, but I think one of the most brilliant things Jonathan Smith did was hire Mike Riley, at least for the first spring, before Mike took the job, the USFL, because he had a head coach with a ton of experience and a ton of knowledge. And I don't know if that was a prerequisite that he had to hire somebody like that, but there's just a lot that happens as a head coach. And that's, I mean, you're a top 10 paid person in the state of Oregon. You're a CEO of an organization, essentially. And I know going from an offensive coordinator at the high school level, I've never been a head coach, but there's a whole nother level of just stuff to deal with, even in high school, let alone junior high, or, like being a head coach in junior high. There's a ton of moving parts. I can't even imagine what Trent's job is like. But we moved him from a D coordinator, which is a very defined job, to a very large, kind of loosely defined job with not a lot of. And basically, 3 weeks ago, we hear Scott say, "Well, we're going to get him some more help that he needs." Well, why didn't we set him up in a way to be successful from the get-go? Again, that's my frustration. Like, we're to a point of eating bugs, and we're saying, "Oh, maybe we should have had a plan to bring more food with us into the wilderness in case we got lost. Maybe we should have, been more thoughtful about it." Again, that's the tenuous frustration. Probably should have planned a little bit better in this and put Trent in a better situation, making sure he had, number one, the resources he needed, to maintain personnel. If that was the reason to hire him, let's make sure that he has those resources and the people around him to help him be successful. And I don't think we did a good job of that. So I think would say most of the former players I talk with have a lot of, I'll say, empathy for Trent, because he was put in this really tough situation by the guy that hired him. And that makes it very difficult. I don't know the way out of it, because even if we bring in a new athletic director and do some different things there, it's tough to go backwards on anything. And now say "Hey, Trent, we're going to provide you this mentor head coach." That's tough to try to put him into a better situation. So I don't know what else to say on that. I think we all want Trent to be successful and do well. And we want Gundy, we want Cav, we want Langs, all the people that have been a successful part of Oregon State. We want success for them. But the expectations are too high for what I think they can actually fulfill with what they've been given by the fan expectation.
And Tim, I was gonna ask you about the Civil War, but at this point, who gives a shit about that? Because that game, like we talked about earlier, not gonna be competitive. I know your stance on it too, but it seems like you align with a lot of the fan base right now. With Scott Barnes, probably not the guy we want to be leading us. We understand that Scott has been dealt a tough hand as an athletic director. He's had some health issues. He's getting up there in age. Where can this university go? Is President Murphy aggressive enough to care about Oregon State athletics enough to put some pressure on him to make some moves? And then there's Brent Blaylock. There's this Blueprint Sports thing going on. Schools are dropping them like dead flies right now, dude. Arkansas just left. Penn State's not even dealing with them. What's Tim, with all this outside noise, okay, you're 0-6, the worst team since 91. As a player, how do you navigate all of this?
Yeah, I look at going back to our roots. So Josiah Lake, when I played basketball, Josiah Lake always wore this big wristband. It was like, back in the day, it was like the Jordan wristband, the big thick one. And all I remember is it had a Nike sign on it, and then on the other side it said RYR, RYR. Remember your roots. And I think that's what we have to get back to is live a little bit of RYR and kind of inject that into our veins at Oregon State. And what does that mean? Like I look back and say, what did it take for us to be successful? And I heard this term maybe 6 months ago at a conference I was at, and it kind of stuck in my mind. And I was thinking about our show today. It just kind of kept resurfacing, and it was the three H's: humble, hungry, and hustle. And I think we have to, like, if you're eating bugs and you want to stop eating bugs, what do you got to do? There's got to be a certain amount of humility that comes with that to like acknowledge where we're at. There's got to be a hustle, like, okay, I want to get out of this situation. And we got to be hungry. Like you're already in survival mode because you're kind of hungry, but it's a different type of hunger, right? It's a hunger for something better, not to just stay alive. It's a hunger to gain, not just sustain. And so that's to me what we have to get back to, and getting leadership that is not about maintaining any status quos. And I look back at it again, when I came here, the athletic department was a complete mess. They've just gone through major issues. And I think one point, I'm not positive about this, but I think like Dean Pritchard from the engineering school became an interim athletic director of some type, just so they could even like review the budget to see how bad it had been screwed up under Dutch. And then that's when Mitch Barnhart came in shortly after that. And you talk about a guy that was those three things, kind of hungry, hustle, humble, to get after it. And Mitch like even made it clear, like, I'm not going to be here for long, but I'm going to be here and get it going. And ultimately, I mean, I don't know if Mitch hired Coach Casey. I think that might have been under Dutch. I can't remember. But, he obviously helped, get Coach Casey more resources. He brought in Dennis Erickson when maybe that would have been frowned upon at other schools. But, like, we needed to take a chance. And he went and sought counsel and on hey, what should I do here? And he got counsel on, you should take a chance. You should do this. And that accelerated us. And so it's that mindset, I think, that we really need to change if we're going to move forward. We can't try to be other places. And I feel like right now, in like the Instagram age, like we all want to just try to be like everybody else. Like, I can't take it when our Instagram account or Twitter account posts like 17-0 into the quarter. Like, why would we ever post that? Into the game, 27-23. Why would we post that? Why are we posting losses? Like, that is to me insane. And if you ask people, well, we got to stay relevant, we have to make posts. Dude, show a picture of the plane and say traveling home safely or something like that. Don't even show the score. Like, it's that kind of stuff. We have to change that mentality. Like, I think winners started posting that kind of stuff, and everybody thought, oh, we got to post that stuff because Ohio State does it. Stop it. Like, it's embarrassing. So that's me passionately arguing my point.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for coming on. You just have so much knowledge and wealth of OSU and so many good stories. And we're just so thankful to have a guy like you that's so dedicated to the university, especially as a former player. Just Thank you so much again for coming on. I just got one more question for you. What is your message to Beaver Nation for being 0-6 right now?
This will sound so sappy and terrible, but Bill Cowher said this all the time in Pittsburgh, and I hated it, but I get it. Because again, it's an acceptance of where you're at, but not an acceptance of where you have to be. And my takeaway is it is what it is. And Bill Cowher said that all the time. Guys, it is what it is. Like we're 0-6. It is what it is. But it doesn't mean we have to end up being 0-12 when the season's over. And he talked a lot about the ebb and the flow of a season. And, you know, we could easily have won a couple more games, probably 3 more games. We could be 3-3 very easy. That's football. The NFL, was playing. I don't know what the spreads are today. The average game was decided by 2.7 points. It was decided by less than a field goal. Like, there was days that you lost by that less than a field goal, and there was days you won by that less than a field goal. But it is what it is, and if we let like 0-6 determine our happiness, I mean, we could be frustrated, but let's at least continue to encourage these players on and cheer on Beaver Nation, even though it's tough. I mean, I think it's still the right move, unless we're going to become Duck fans or something. And then I'm wearing a yellow tie, and that's not yellow, it's gold, and there's blue dots on it, and it matched my suit. So normally I try not to wear yellow stuff or an orange tie today, but I mean, I'm going to support the boys and I'm going to cheer them on because I know that the fans did that for me, and that's the right thing to do. And it is what it is that we're 0-6. Like, we can complain. It's not going to do any good. Let's cheer them on Saturday and get the first W, right?
You're preaching to the choir, man. We've been trying to say, just keep on showing up to the games. I know my dad still will, my uncle still will. I'm flying out from Austin to go to the Wazoo game. I try to get out to one home game a year, man. We got to get it going, man. Like if the fans ain't going to believe, who is? You know, it's Oregon State or nobody. It's no one's going to come save us. We've already figured that out. You know, like no one's saving us.
Nope, nobody's saving us. So let's cheer them on and stay enthusiastic. But at the same time, to do that, we also need to see that there is a new vision being cast for where we're at. And so that's what I would like to see. The new vision being cast for where we're at. I don't think it's a full sale. You have to fire everybody. I actually think that would be like when people say like fire Trent right now, I think that would be one of the worst things we could do considering the current college football situation. Where I think that could set the program, man. I mean, because the guys could transfer like immediately. Like you could have no team left. I mean, we've even seen that like in bowl games where the coach leaves and enough guys follow him. It's like, sorry, we can't even come to the bowl. We don't have enough players left on the team in significant roles. Like it's just not worth it. And so I think that would be really detrimental mid-season firing at this point, just with the current state of football. So like that's the number one reason I would say, hey, it is what it is. Let Trent finish the season off and let's see what he can make of it, you know, at this point. Now, getting rid of special teams coordinator, I mean, that's a super tough one because, you know, it's Jamie's somebody that's close to Trent. Coach Erickson's nephew, probably a lot of people know that, but, you know, it's a very tight family situation when it comes to football world. So those are not easy decisions to make. I do think that something had to be done, but it is what it is. Let's keep focusing on the guys and moving forward.
Tim, man, you're a Beaver great. We appreciate you. We can go on and on and on, dude. You're one of the best. We appreciate you for coming on. Thank you, and as always, brother, go Beavs.
Go Beavs.
Go Beavs. Appreciate you guys. Take care.